Hi everybody, this is Anne. I was inspired this week by potters who did slip casting with layers of different colored clays. When the piece was leather hard, they carved into the layers to create cool surfaces. I was wondering if there was a way to do this on a wheel-thrown piece. I'll show you 3 experiments that we're excited about as our attempts to replicate those results. Now here's a vase that I threw on the wheel. I've already let it dry to leather hard. For my experiment, I need to make a batch of slip. I scooped this gooey, lumpy clay out of the bottom of my reclaim bucket. My goal is to thin and smooth it out to a creamy consistency. So I first add some water to it, and then use the immersion blender to mix it. I keep doing this until I get it to a watered-down cream where it just falls off my brush. I continued to add a little water, mix it, and then test it until I got it watered down enough to flow smoothly when brushed over the surface of the pot. Then I set that aside. My goal is to apply different colored layers to the outside of my pot. For the first layer, I brushed Amico Velour Black Underglaze to the outside with a fan brush. To speed up the drying process, I used a heat gun, but you can let it dry naturally. I needed that layer to be very dry before adding the next layer. Then I began brushing on the creamy white slip over the black. I made sure to add the layer from the very bottom to the top. I found that I needed 2 layers of slip to really cover the black. Again, I let this dry. I then again covered that layer with black underglaze and let that dry. I repeated that process until I had 3 layers of black separated by 3 layers of the white slip. Then I let the whole thing dry until it was a cheese leather hard. Now it's time to do the carving. For the first experiment, I decided to start with a V-shaped carving tool. In this case, I used the Diamondcore P12. You don't have to use this particular one. You can get similar results with basic carving tools. I simply started at the top and gouged various steps of horizontal lines like this all the way around the piece. I continued making these lines all the way around the top. I added a second row in between the first ones. Next, I decided to use this funny-looking teardrop gliding carver in the clay between the deep gouges to add carved lines that were not as deep over the surface. The different depths along the surface are what really result in the cool, fine line organic patterns. I thought I'd leave some white areas, so I skipped down to the center of the pot and began the same technique with the V-shaped carver and then the horizontal lines in 2 rows. Then I switched to the teardrop glider tool again. I then repeated the same process at the bottom of the pot. Once I finished those 3 sections, I took a look at the whole piece and reassessed my pattern, and I thought I needed to connect the 3 sections of the pot. So I just used my teardrop glider to carve horizontal lines to connect the 3 sections. Wow, what an exciting surface. That has so much movement, drama, and texture. It has a different look wherever you turn it. On this next vase, I not only used the white slip and black underglaze, but I also used Amico bright red underglaze for the top layers. Xiem had a great idea about how to carve our next experiment. We decided to use the Diamondcore T7 to make some circular gouges. I began the experiment by making gouge marks into the surface so the circles were touching. Xiem had a little different idea about what he thought this piece could be, so I let him take over the carving. He began by making gouges of different sizes and depths to create these little cells of fine-line concentric circles. He noted that if the clay had already dried out too much, it would chip from the surface, so it was better when he dampened the clay a little bit. He also noted that the clay at the bottom of the piece was still a little bit too damp to carve, and would just smear if he carved into it. So it was better to let that dry a little bit before continuing. He debated about whether to do this pattern to the very top, but in the end decided to keep the top part without any carving. I just love the look both from a macro level and that overall look of maybe like sea coral or even some sort of sample of somebody's blood work. Here's another version. After we shot the video, Xiem carved into a piece we used as a sample. Here's what he came up with. I can really see a lot of possibilities for interpretation with this technique. On the third vase, I used the same white slip, the black and red underglazes, but I also added a yellow underglaze layer for fun. For carving, I decided to use the squared off carving tool. I still got circular patterns on the inside of the gouges, but the squared off top layer makes each carving appear like little windows with paintings on the inside. I started with longer marks at the top and then towards the center varied the size of each window. I turned it upside down for better access. I again started with longer gouges along the foot and narrowing my cuts the closer I got to the center to match the cuts that I had already made. Altogether, the windows being carved at different lengths creates movement around the piece, and when you view each window on its own, it's its own separate picture. I enjoyed this experiment, and I hope it gives you ideas and inspiration of other projects and techniques that you can do with your carving tools. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. I'll see you next time in the studio.